The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of Track Wrestling, along with the show pony himself, Andy Hamilton, also of Track Wrestling. And we have lots of regrets from last show, namely that we did not mention the quote of the week from Thomas Gilman. How many times do you think we've said that? Show pony or workhorses? The official quote is, we're...
Less than 1,000?
Less than 1,000. I love that quote, man. I love that quote.
You're calling me a show pony.
I'm calling you the show pony.
I thought you said I was a workhorse.
You are, but it's funnier if you go with the show pony off the bat, and then we get to explain that you're a workhorse. So It all kind of ties together, because you're a workhorse. You're not a show pony, and neither is Thomas Gilman.
He's a workhorse.
He is a workhorse. And we went through our list of who would be more show pony and who would be more workhorse. And, of course, let's fill people in on what the quote was. It was at the end of Thomas Gilman's World Team Trials interview, and he said, we're workhorses, not show ponies.
Thomas, they're going to try to really hype up this match like any of the Final X bouts.
Yeah.
Is that worth your time to get caught up in any of that?
It ain't worth my time. It ain't worth my time to get caught up in the hype. The hype is not for me. It's not for my opponents. It's not for the athletes. It's for the fans. It's for the media like you guys. Everyone gets, hoorah, let's go for Final X. You know, it's a pageantry show. We're workhorses. We're not show ponies. So let's keep it in perspective.
It's going to go down as one of his best quotes that he's ever had. And it's total Thomas Gilman, 100% all the way. And we loved it.
Yep.
Thank you, Thomas Gilman, for that unbelievable quote. Because it's going to be on, once you retire, I hope he doesn't retire for another Olympic cycle. But when he does, I hope that we have a top 10 list of Thomas Gilman quotes.
So what do you think would be on Gilman's all-time top 10 quote list, Kyle? Do you have any in mind?
I don't have any off the top of my head. I think it would be worth pining through some of his best of quotes. I think there's numerous out there, and I wouldn't want to do a disservice to the quotes to not at least explore what they might be. But I don't know. Do you have anything off the top of your head that resonates that he talked about? I know that he was pretty fired up after the national tournament a couple of years, or during the national tournament. There's a litany of quotes that you could get from nationals, I think, and you were still at the register for the majority of those, if not all. And I think those would be a good place to start. And then he's done enough good things since the national tournament to be quotable.
This is a project for the next couple weeks, coming up with some great Gilman quotes.
Yeah,
I think so. I don't think it's something we can do on the fly here, because we're going to leave off something that's obvious.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we wait till after Final X?
Okay.
Because we don't know what's going to transpire after that. We don't know.
We may have 10 top quotes just from Final X.
We could. And then if he makes the World Championship team, we want to make sure that we give him the opportunity to win a gold medal and then go from there. But as we look at the World Championships, gosh, the storyline here is David Taylor's out. Mm-hmm. David Taylor is out, and it just shows you, and his post on social media about it just touched a lot of those topics, that it's a fine line. He got his World Championship, and I think that's the one thing that we're both very glad about, is that he has one in the bag, is that we won't have to wonder what could David Taylor have done if he would have been healthy or had the opportunity. I'm glad he's got one in the bag, but dude, I feel bad for this situation.
Yeah, it's like my gut was tied in a knot when he went down with the injury, beat the streets, and then it was again Friday night when he put out that social media post. But having the chance to talk to him over the weekend, he seems like he's in a pretty good spot mentally. He feels like he's been really blessed. He never missed a match in high school due to injury. He never missed a match in college due to injury. So looking at it like really thankful for what he's been able to accomplish to this point in his career, and also that doesn't change anything drastically on the Olympic front in his pursuit of becoming an Olympic gold medalist. So he said, if the timing had been different, he would have wrestled this way with the injury. But now it gives him a chance to get geared up for a run to Tokyo in 2020.
Which brings up the same conversation we had last year when Nashawn Garrett went out. Is Joe Cologne filled in, and what's the opportunity for the next guy? And the next guy is now Pat Downey. And he's been a storyline for other reasons for the last couple years, but here he is. He has his chance. He's stuck with it. And Pat Downey, for all of the storylines, all of the places he's been across the country, he is now a senior level world team member. And I think he's making a run in his best style, world silver medalist, junior world silver medalist several years ago. And he has his crack. And I got to say, I think he's medal worthy. I think he's a guy that has shown that he has the skill and the caliber to do it. Can he put it together? I hope so. But I think that Pat Downey is going to be certainly one of the storylines, if not the storyline, going into the 2019 World Championships. Just what is he going to be able to accomplish?
Well, I think anybody that the United States puts on the mat in men's freestyle now is probably medal worthy at the world level. I think you got to consider him a threat just because of the depth in the system, top to bottom. Now, I don't know that 86 kilos is necessarily the deepest weight that there is in the United States at this point, but we have seen probably the best version of Pat Downey that we've ever seen on the senior level. I don't think that there's any question about that. What we're seeing in 2019 is the best version of Pat Downey we've seen up to this point. In better shape, able to hold up for 6 minutes, able to wrestle hard for 6 minutes. That was not the case in 2018 or in previous years. So he's a guy that's super dangerous, can throw some people. He's capable of putting a lot of points on the board. And now that he's hanging in there and battling hard for 6 minutes, he gives himself a chance against some of the best guys in the world.
If David Taylor announces that he cannot compete before the challenge tournament, do you think that would have shifted some of the weight classes or some of the competitors to go down to 86 kilos?
Or maybe up to 86 kilos?
Or up, yeah.
Possibly. Because, I don't know.
Yeah, now we're in a dilemma where it is an Olympic weight class. The weight classes around it on either side are not Olympic weight classes, so maybe it adds incentive. The one that I think about is Bo Nickel possibly going down in weight class. And certainly if you can get a medal, it sets you up amazingly for the 2020 Olympic trials. So in Bo Nickel's case, let's just say he makes the team, goes to the World Championship, medals, he gets to be on top of the ladder in potentially State College. It sounds like it's going to be in State College for the Olympic trials. You never know, but it's interesting to speculate on what could have happened.
I don't know. Has he outgrown 86 kilos?
He may have, but
I guess
I'm just assuming that he's going to go down to 86.
I don't think that's a given. I think he's probably going to go up. That's what I've thought all along, is I think he goes up to 97.
He's filled out for sure. So I think.
Remember when we saw him in Budapest? We're like, whoa, this dude's big. Yeah,
he does look big. So yeah, I guess in my head, I just assumed he was going to go down, but there's no reason to believe that. That's something that I thought, but he certainly has the frame and the size to be able to bump up in weight class.
How about Downey now? If he goes and wins a world medal, he's sitting out till the finals of the Olympic trials, best of three. And you've got potentially David Taylor, Alex Dieringer, Jaden Cox. Who knows what Kyle Dake's going to do? I imagine he goes down to 74. All those dudes are battling to get through each other to get to Pat Downey in a best of three.
Pat Downey, and I think David Taylor put that in the social media post that, hey, you've been given a gift. I don't know the exact words, but Pat Downey has
Shoot your shot, Downey.
Shoot your shot, Downey. He has this unbelievable opportunity here at the World Championships, and what's he going to do with it? I think he can medal. I've seen what he can do, and I think you alluded to it, that not only is it just he's winning matches, throwing guys right off the bat, he's coming back and showing grit. Think about the Miles Martin match at the U.S. Open. That just shows you that he can hang with it. And if he has the conditioning, he's got the skill, who knows what he can do. He's got a nice upside.
Yep. And we'll see what now with, what are we sitting here in end of May, 3.5 months, that he knows he's the guy for him to go get it. How does this affect his urgency? A lot of people that are doubting him. I know that there are a lot of people that are skeptical. A lot of people have talked about, should there be a process after this? Pat Downey's been a polarizing guy. So there's a camp that's obviously all for him. He's wearing the red, white, and blue. There's a camp that has maybe been a little bit more skeptical. Does that motivate him? Does that fire him up to bring out an even greater side of Pat Downey?
I think it does. From what I see over the last few years, I think it does, as long as it gets channeled properly. This is a guy that absolutely will not take a back seat or back down from whatever it is, whether it's a Twitter argument. He's gonna get in there and battle.
Yeah.
I think that's the one common thread with Pat Downey, is that he will battle no matter what the outlet. He's going to battle. And so, and we've seen that before, where when you get a new guy from the U.S., people know what David Taylor's going to do. When you get a new guy from the U.S., a little uncertainty, you've seen some guys come in and do pretty well. Look at Jake Herbert the first year he came in. He went hard, got his world silver medal, couldn't replicate it. And I think that could be Pat Downey's story if he chooses to make it that story, because he is a dangerous guy. You don't know what he's going to get into. He gets some body locks. He's got some fun stuff, and he's going to bring a style that's going to be unique. So Pat Downey's on the world team, man. It's going to be pretty crazy. It looks like, as we're talking about just news of note, Seth Gross, if he gets his 6th year, will be at the University of Wisconsin.
And he might be, even if he doesn't get his 6th year.
Yeah, he might be there anyway, going for the graduate year. So we'll see what happens there. 133 just might get crazier than it did last year with Seth Gross back in the mix.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that we missed out on last year, is that you didn't have the returning NCAA champion. So if he gets a 6th year, you're going to see him as a Badger. And 133, man, how do you predict that at this point? It's going to be a crazy weight class.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about how great it was without him.
Yeah.
Without him, without the best version of Micic, if we get everybody, and it'll be interesting to see what guys do with the Olympic year. Olympic situation throws a little bit of a wrench into everything, with the trials being a couple weeks after the NCAA championships.
I haven't even seen do you know the exact date? I don't know off the top of my head what it is.
Yeah, I think it's first weekend of April.
Quick turnaround, and Seth Gross certainly has Olympic ambitions. And I don't know. I'm not sure that we're assuming that Seth Gross goes to 33, maybe bumps up to 41. He was pretty big for the weight class, so have no idea what he would be thinking. But first things first, he's got to get that 6th year of eligibility. So we might see Seth Gross on the scene again. And really, I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that he goes to Wisconsin, where Chris Bono, his former coach, is now the head wrestling coach at Wisconsin. So not a big surprise, but some big news there on a couple fronts. Seth Gross in at Wisconsin, David Taylor out due to injury. It's terrible when it happens that way, especially with the talent we have, and you have a proven commodity. But hey, as we look at this, I don't know. We haven't really seen Kyle Dake yet. What's going to happen there? That of the Final X matches, the Dieringer Dake is my number one match, or matches, that I'm looking forward to seeing. I just think Dieringer, he just seems like he's on a different plane right now. And I just don't have enough data on Dake, having not seen him this whole year, not heard from him much, just to know where he is. Now, Dake is unbelievably dangerous, but man, Dieringer, the way he looked at the World Team Trials Challenge tournament, I can just see he's ready to give this a real go. We talked about that last week, but I think he's on the cusp of doing this.
I don't think I've ever seen Zahid beaten like that.
Yeah,
go back a ways.
Yeah.
It's cool when there's a battle for a world team spot that could actually be for a world title.
Yeah.
And that's
cool?
what the stakes are.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, Kyle Dake's toughest matches after he got through, his toughest matches were to make the team. He had to pull out a nail biter against Dieringer in Vegas in the U.S. Open finals. And Zahid pushed him a couple times. The only guy to score points against him after the Open.
Yeah, and I don't know off the top of my head what the scores were that Zahid won over Dieringer, but if I remember right, he handled him last year. So
yeah, they were pretty convincing.
Just a complete turnaround this year. So that's my number one weight class to watch. And then, of course, we have to talk about 61 kilograms because of our guest that we have today, Tony Ramos. I guess you'd call it his retirement show in some way. I know he'll still be around as a coach, but he's someone that you covered often, and you were there when he was doing the Mike Tyson stare down and getting Carver Hawkeye Arena fans into a frenzy. We get a chance to talk in depth with Tony Ramos after he announced his retirement by putting his shoes ceremoniously on the mat after his last match at the World Team Trials Challenge Tournament. It's going to be fun to break it down with Tony.
Yeah, and I think on my phone I have a video of Tony Ramos in a stare down with Shane Sparks. After he won the NCAA title in 2014. I mean, after Tony Ramos won the NCAA title, not Shane Sparks.
It's good clarification.
But, how
did that happen? Why would
Shane just wanted to stare him down?
Okay, so it was a staged stare down. It was staged. Okay. But in your time covering the Hawkeyes, where does Tony Ramos fit in on fan favorites? Because it seemed like he really won over the crowd with his style, with his approach, all of those things. It just seemed like Hawkeye fans really resonated with this guy.
He was one of the all-time fan favorites during his time with the Hawkeyes.
Yeah. And as we talk about credentials and overrated, underrated, he's one of those guys that didn't place as a freshman, third, second, and first. And I think he's going to go down as someone that Hawkeye fans will always remember, even though he's probably not in the top 25 all time in Hawkeyes. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But if you're talking about fandom and people that appreciated him, he might be in the top 5.
Because he delivered in the biggest moments in Carver Hawkeye Arena.
He did. Yeah. Think about those moments. All the
win against Jordan Oliver.
Yeah.
The place was electric then, and then the 2 pins against Penn State. Pandemonium.
He delivered. He always delivered at Carver, it seemed like, when he was in college. It was just he loved being there, and he thrived on it. So
he'd never lost a match in the building until the Olympic trials.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I was wondering if that might be the case. Yeah. So Tony Ramos will be on the show here momentarily, but as we look to what's coming up, I know that you're going to be at the U23 World Team Trials. We have Cadet World Championships coming up, juniors. It's still a full docket right now, but as we talk about that youth movement, let's just take a minute to look at the junior world team. Are these the guys that are going to be the next wave going into college? Of course, they're going to be good, but are they going to be Zahid-like and Mark Hall-like and the guys that are going to carry the sport forward? Do you see that potential out of this junior world team?
Well, I think the one thing that's really interesting about the junior world team this year is like a lot of these guys and their peers have already moved on to the senior level. Dayton Fix. He made the Final X last year when he was a year removed from basically shutting out the field, almost shutting out the field at the Junior World Championships. I think it was, 53-1?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's moved on. Gable Steveson is eligible to make the junior team. Last year was technically his first year as a junior because he was cadet eligible when he won a junior world title. in 2017. He's in Final X. Mekhi Lewis won a junior world title last year. He's not competing in, either level this year. I don't know what his plans are for the weekend. If he's going to go U23s and try to make the U23 team, remains to be seen. But
Colton Schultz on the Greco side. So what's fascinating is guys aren't waiting until their junior clock is up to go pursue the senior level and having success at it. As we look at the names, I think the one on the junior side, David Carr is there, but Aaron Brooks is a guy we have discussed numerous times, but I think he's a superstar. The next guy, yeah.
He's a superstar, no doubt.
He's going to be amazing. I think Tag Brothers could be really good, and you just see a lot of these guys. I think they're the next crop. But with the junior side, the results are really going to be indicative of what happens, because we've seen a lot of these guys in the college scene. We've seen their results at the junior level, and it's translated well. Mm-hmm. So I think that what happens at this Junior World Championships is really going to be a telltale sign of what is going to happen in the college wrestling scene for the next 4 years.
Well, I think the depth in the pipeline is at such a level now that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the senior level. You represent the United States at a world championship in men's freestyle, you're ready to win a world medal for the most part. I think by and large, if you make a junior world team for the United States right now, you're probably going to be in the mix to win a medal as well.
What do you think Nick Suriano said out of the World Team Trials Challenge tournament? Any thought on that? He said
he had some other things he wanted to pursue this summer. I don't know what those things are, but
boy, he would have been fun to be in the mix, though. That would have been great to have him at the World Team Trials Challenge tournament. Excited to see Spencer Lee, hopefully next year. I haven't
for sure
heard anything, and it looks like the Iowa lineup's going to be a little bit different. Sounds like Teasdale is coming to Iowa.
He's in Iowa.
Yeah, 133, and then
we'll see.
You think he will be there? I mean, you think what other weight class would he go? 41?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think he's ever going to get that big, but remains to be seen what they're gonna do for a lineup with those first few spots next year, and got a lot of options, no doubt.
Man, when you go on paper, Iowa does look pretty good right now. When you go up and down, when you plug in some potential, I think Hawkeyes have a legitimate shot this upcoming year. I think everyone thought that, but I think they have the workhorses in the stable to get this done, possibly.
They're not show ponies.
They're not.
We're workhorses. We're not show ponies. So let's keep it in perspective.
They could do this, so we'll see what happens. What do you want to get to a former Hawkeye here, Tony Ramos? Talk to him, pick his brain.
Let's do it.
Our guest today recently put his shoes on the mat, as is the tradition. That means he is retiring from the sport of wrestling. It's Tony Ramos, NCAA champion for the University of Iowa in 2014, two-time world team member, and now retired. How are you, Tony?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
We're doing good. What's good down in North Carolina? We had a chance to spend quite a bit of time down there, and we loved it. What do you think about the great state of North Carolina?
I think it's awesome. As you guys saw when you came down, the weather's beautiful. There's a lot of southern hospitality, and, can't complain when the sun's always shining. So it's been really good.
As far as Chapel Hill, tell us what's good about that. We went and saw the campus. We saw a little bit. It was beautiful there. But what do you like doing in Chapel Hill?
Oh, man. It's probably a little different now that I've had kids than where I used to like to go out and do. We like going to the pool. We got a nice pool in our neighborhood. Just being outside, going to the parks, doing stuff outdoors. There's some trails, hiking you can go and do. Walking through. I don't know if you guys saw the little type of garden they had on campus, going through that little garden. We take family pictures in there a lot. So there's just a lot of nice, fun, relaxing things that you can do down here. Going to the ocean, fishing, that type of stuff.
What did you like to do when you were in Iowa City? Did you hit the hot spots there?
I did not hit any hot spots there. That was definitely more just staying in the Dan Gable Wrestling Complex, maybe doing a little bit of hunting with some of my buddies and playing some video games, but not doing much of that nowadays.
We can learn a lot about you if you go pick up that big book by T.C. LaFonte. It is an amazing book, and when I saw it, I was skeptical at first. I thought, how does Tony Ramos, who is still competing, deserve a book this thick? And then once I dug into it, I said, this is really a good book, really well done, and my hat's off to him. It was a fascinating read. Let's go through just getting that off the ground. Did he approach you about it? Did you approach him? How did this book come to life?
I think it was kind of mutual. He was one of my coaches in high school. He was also a teacher at the high school. I actually never had him, but, he's an English teacher, and he's done a few children's books with Charles Tillman, who played for the Bears. And, we just kind of started talking about maybe one day doing a autobiography, or not, doing a biography on myself. We worked out the details, kind of how it was all going to go down, and then we sat down, did a bunch of interviews. He interviewed, my mom, my brothers, coaches. He went down to Iowa City and sat down with Tom, Terry, did some stuff with them. And, he really took the time to make sure he got with all the people he needed to before, finalizing the book. The hardest part for me probably is I don't like reading a lot of books. I had to sit down and, proof the whole thing and edit a lot of it to see what I wanted in, what I wanted out. Not editing like grammar wise, but more editing on that end. And, I thought it was going to take me a long time, but I got through it pretty fast. It was pretty cool to reminisce on some of the stories from back in the day that you kind of forget or, at the time weren't a big deal to you.
How close is the final product to what the original draft he sent you? How much did you have to take out?
Actually, not too much. I think it was pretty close. I tried staying true to it as much as possible. I didn't want to take out anything or, really pick and choose which stories got told or didn't get told. Everyone knows that I'm pretty open and, I speak my mind and say things that need to be said. So, I tried keeping it as open as possible.
One of the scenes, and I can just visualize it when it happened, but I just want to see how close this is to reality, is just the offer that you got, the scholarship offer, 3%? 3%?
Yeah.
I mean, I read that and I was like, this can't be right. We got to ask Tony about this at some point, but it sounds like Tom was in the office and said, we don't have that amount to give you. I think you wanted something more than that. He said, we have 3%. I think you just said, we're taking it, and then you became a Hawkeye. Is that pretty close to how it happened?
So, it's a great story. I know Terry loves telling the story. And I use the story still to this day to kids that I recruit, just to kind of make them realize that it's not always about money. It's about what's going to give you, the best opportunities. And for me, I felt like Iowa was that place, once some of the other schools were kind of out of the picture. We went down to Iowa City. We were, kind of on an unofficial with a bunch of people. We were supposed to go to the Iowa State football game. And we had walked over, and my brother, me, Izzy, and my dad were all there. And once we got to the gate, Frankie looks at Tom and goes, Tom, we didn't come down here to watch a football game. We came down here for one thing. And Tom was like, all right, well, let's check these guys in and we'll head back to the room and go talk. So we literally walked to the gate, turned around, walked back, went into the room, and we started talking. And when it got to the point about scholarship, Tom just kind of broke it down and said, hey, we don't have a lot of money. We spent a lot of money to get pretty good and to win national titles. But I got 3% for you. And I just looked at him and said, all right, I'm in. And my dad's kicking me. My brother's like, what the heck just happened? We get in the car. Everyone didn't say a word for a while. They're like, do you realize what you just did? I was like, yeah, I'm good with it. That's where I want to go. That's where I want to wrestle. We got home. My mom was freaking out because I still had a visit to Indiana. It was offering me a full ride, and they were going to put my brother on a full ride if I went. So, it was an interesting few days and a few weeks, but it all worked out for the best.
Tony, my first story I wrote about you was your commitment story. And I think you called out Mike Zadek and Doug Schwab and everybody inside that room. How did that go over? What guys think of that?
I think, I'm not sure because I wasn't there, but I think Tom and them were pretty excited about my attitude going forward and didn't realize I was going to take a backseat to anyone. And I think they realized that when the first day I walked on campus, that summer when I got there. I remember my first practice, I walked in the room, and Terry grabbed me, and I started wrestling with Terry. And then Montel walked in the room and didn't have a partner, and Terry's like, all right, now you're going with Montel. So they put me right with Montel. And Montel and me ended up almost getting in a little scuffle in the weight room because we started wrestling into the weight room. And I don't think he liked the fact that a young guy was coming in and just wasn't going to take a back seat. I was going to wrestle as hard as I could, even though I was getting whooped. But I think that also earned a lot of respect from the get-go. Probably the same as some of those comments in that first article you wrote. I think I heard a story, and you might know more about it, is Tom or someone printed out the article and posted it in the room, headline, Ramos calls out everyone or something like that.
Yeah, it was on one of the pillars inside the practice room there for a little while, I think.
Yeah. So, I think some guys might have been excited. Some guys might have took it, a little offensive, but that's how it was. That's how it always will be.
When you are being recruited, so you're coming to the University of Iowa, how much does Carver Hawkeye Arena play into that? There's got to be a huge allure to knowing that you're going to get 10K plus at times. How much does that factor into wanting to go to Iowa?
I mean, that was, to me, I wouldn't say it was the biggest selling point, but that was kind of, before we even talked with Tom, I remember that same recruiting trip when we showed up, we pulled right up to Carver and walked into Carver. And I could just envision the arena being full, 15,000 fans going crazy, and creating those memories and those moments that I had in there. And it was fun. It was exciting. That's kind of when I knew. I was like, yeah, this is going to be the place. Carver can do some special things. It's got some magic.
Going back to Carver, you're known for the stare down, not just at Carver, everywhere, the back and forth, the Mike Tyson. When did you realize that was becoming an Iowa wrestling phenomenon?
Oh, man, I think it had to be maybe sophomore year. I don't think freshman year I really realized it was becoming a big thing. Sophomore year you start seeing all these videos of kids doing it. There's talk about it. You're at camps and kids are asking for pictures with it. And that's kind of when it really started, I think, to pick up. And then when you start having a lot of success with it too, that's when things take off.
The one I remember is David Thorne, I think, before, I think a consolation match at NCAAs, and the match got delayed. I don't even remember how long that went on. But you guys just stood there, I think, in the center for probably, what do you think it was, 5 minutes maybe?
Oh, man, I can't even remember. There were a few of those, for quarterfinals and stuff, when they always take their time before the finals with Graf. They all kind of run together.
When you look back at that, when did that start for you? Was that something you just said, all right, I'm gonna implement Mike Tyson's techniques of intimidating my opponent, and I'm gonna start it now? Or did it just come about? Take us through how you came about doing the stare down when you competed.
I think it just kind of really came about. I mean, I read his biography, and it was something that hit close to me. And I was always a mental type of guy. I saw a sports psychologist when I was, in middle school, going all through high school. So any type of mental warfare or mental prep that I could use, that was like my routine. It was part of my routine to get ready. And you hear a lot of high-level, athletes, not just wrestlers, talk about their routine. And it was something that's kind of stuck. And, when the fans really started to build it is, I think, when it turned into something, more entertainment-wise.
Is that something early on as a competitor that you like to beat people mentally? Is that something that you liked and you just said, this sport's for me because I get an opportunity to do that?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, you still love it to this day. And there's nothing better than being in practice when you're dog tired and you can physically, emotionally, mentally feel and see someone breaking or, in the practice that you're wrestling with. And even when you're dead tired, somehow it just goes away. That exhaustion goes away when you see someone break. And that's when you get even better because you learn how to pick it up and wrestle through tough situations or when you're tired and score a lot of points. It's a feeling that's hard to explain.
And one of the things I got out of the book was that you just were never afraid to lose. You bumped up in weight class and wrestled better competition, even though that your record was on the line. Is that something that you just have? Like, where does that come from? Just not being afraid to lose and just throwing it out there all the time and just being uninhibited with your desire to impose your will on someone?
I don't really know if it was being afraid to lose. It was more or less wanting to chase down being the best and wrestling the best guys. I think everyone's got a little bit of fear of losing, but if you can move forward with it in the right way and use it as the right motivation, losing's not always a bad thing. Going through high school, like you said, there were times where I think it was my sophomore, junior year, I put my undefeated record on the line and bumped up a weight class, to wrestle better competition or for the better of the team. That didn't come from a fear of losing. It came from my competitiveness. I just always wanted to be the best and wrestle the best and, prove that I could do something people said you can't. And even that still to this day, I would take almost any match possible and wrestle anyone that they put in front of me. I remember my senior year, there were talks that I had with Tom about going up to 41, to see if I could be that guy to beat Stever. And also help the team out with being able to get Corey Clark and Gilman, into the lineup. So there's always been that type of mentality for me.
One thing I didn't realize either reading the book is that you were hated by a lot of people in high school, and you probably were in college too, just from opposing teams. The Hawkeyes loved you, but it seemed like you fed off the hatred.
Yeah, there's always going to be people that want to see someone successful fall. And that's, like I said, one of my biggest motivations was proving those people wrong. And even when I came to Iowa, I wouldn't say I was hated, but I think I had to earn my welcoming and earn, that fan affair, I guess I would say, because there were a couple of guys here who were Iowa guys who were supposed to be the best in their recruiting classes, that I had to beat out for the spot and, earn that spot. So, there was a little bit of that too when I got to the University of Iowa to be a Hawkeye. That helped drive me also.
This book is worth getting for a variety of reasons, but it's well worth getting just for the story of your match against Jordan Oliver at Carver Hawkeye Arena and just going through all of the details that go into that. I think Terry Brand said it was one of the top 2 or 3 loudest he's ever heard Carver Hawkeye Arena. Take us through that match in particular, because that was a quintessential match for you, one that you can build your career around, and it had to have given you confidence. Let's talk about the noise level first. When you won that match, could you feel how loud it was in Carver?
Oh, it was crazy. I was so jacked up, and like you said, it was so loud in there, you really couldn't even hear yourself think. And you didn't want to get off the mat either. You wanted to stay out there and bask in that and celebrate with the fans, and, it was awesome. Those moments don't come around many times, so you try to stay out there as long as you can and experience it as long as you can.
But it did come around again for you. You got another one. You got a pin against Penn State, and then Ashton Kutcher is with Mila Kunis, and then he comes over and says that you're one of his heroes, one of his favorite wrestlers. That had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. I don't think I knew they were there before the dual meet started. After my match, I had heard they were there, and he saw him sitting next to Gable. And then I remember at the intermission, they got brought down into the tunnel because, they wanted to meet me, and they stopped me. Ashton, said, "Hey, I'm Ashton Kutcher, big fan, great job, whatnot." And then I remember Mila came up and she goes, "Hi, I'm Mila Kunis." And I just looked at her and I was like, yeah, I know who you are. You have to introduce yourself.
Oh, man.
If there was a moment that I could go back and redo, it'd be that one, because I was so starstruck. And I don't even really know why. Maybe because it was Mila Kunis at the time, and she had all these big movies out, and she was like the big thing. But I wish I could go back and redo that one over.
I mean, and that's your major too, is it's theater. So
yeah, theater arts.
It's in your vein.
Definitely caught me off guard on that one.
Are you truly an Ashton Kutcher fan? Do you have movies that you like of his?
Yeah. I mean, there's some movies and shows I like his. I mean, I grew up watching that show Punk that he always ran.
Oh, yeah.
So I knew who he was. And then being around Iowa City, you know, you hear a lot about him and how he was an Iowa guy. I think he was from Solon, right?
Clear Creek, Amana.
Yeah, over in that area. So you hear a lot about him. You know, back then, I don't know if there were many movies of his that I watched, but he started coming out with a few more. You know, that Valentine's Day movie is a pretty good one. So there's some now that I can pick up and watch and, you know, have a good night.
Just to conclude on Carver Hawkeye Arena, just overall, for those who never get to experience it as a competitor, what's that like to walk out of that tunnel and wrestle for the Hawkeyes in Carver?
Oh, man, it's pretty special. I always compare it to people. It's like wrestling on steroids. You got a little bit of an advantage. You know, the energy, the crowd. People talk about someone getting Carver. You know, there's always things that happen in Carver that you would never expect or shouldn't. And it's on both ends, too. It's not always on for the Iowa guy. You know, sometimes it's against the Iowa guy because they can't deal with that moment. But it's a pretty cool place to wrestle in.
And then also reading the book, you had some growing pains that freshman year. What were those growing pains? How did you get through them?
Oh, yeah, I had a few. You know, I'm not going to say I was always the greatest student or, you know, made some of the smartest choices at that time. You know, I was young. I was out of high school. I had my own place I lived in, you know, and the biggest one was when I got injured in the beginning of the year. I decided not to go to class, I think, from Thanksgiving break till finals, which probably was not the smartest choice. So to get my grades back, and I had a 1.65. I was on academic probation after that first semester. You know, Tom had to bring me in and pretty much tell me, you're on your way out of here, so you better figure it out, or we can go upstairs and, you know, sign your papers right now. And for me, I was a guy who, you had to talk to me once, and that was it. And that was our one conversation, and I don't think we really had any other big problems or issues from then on.
Did you and Tom and Terry click right away? Did you guys like each other and motivate each other from the beginning?
I think so. Terry was really my coach and the one I probably was attached to more, so I would say. But Tom was also, you know, someone I could go to, and I think where we all got along real well, and, you know, why my relationship might have worked better than some others is I wasn't afraid to tell them how I was feeling or tell them what I, you know, thought I needed. We had good communication, and even if they didn't, you know, give me the response back that I wanted, you know, we always found a middle ground, or I always understood. I wasn't questioning what they said, but I always made sure they knew my opinion too, and then we worked it out.
When you won it in 2014, the NCAA championships, you had to grind it out that tournament. It probably wasn't your best wrestling, but you found a way to win every single match. What was that tournament like, and then what did it feel like to finally get it done?
I mean, finally get it done was a huge relief. Like you said, the tournament really for me isn't one of my best, I wouldn't say memories, but my best wrestling. You know, it was a great memory that I won, but looking back on it, I could have done it a lot better in a lot of different ways. Yeah, my junior year was probably the best wrestling, and I know that. I think the fans know that, but, you know, like you said, I was able to get the job done and, you know, be able to say that I was a national champ.
What's it like wrestling Logan Stieber? And I didn't even realize you had beat him a couple times in high school, but then you guys had the college matches. What made him so good? What made him a tough out?
He's a competitor. I mean, he's confident just like I am. He didn't talk as much, but, you know, he had the same confidence in himself. He's a gamer. and he was really good on top. And I think a thing for Logan Stieber that, made him so good is people were afraid to wrestle him. And I think the one thing that gave me a chance every time I stepped out on the mat is I wasn't. I was always trying to climb that mountain and, knock off the guy on top. I think some other guys, might have been happy keeping it close with Logan Stieber. I was always trying to improve my wrestling every year and every practice to beat him. My goal was to beat him and to win national title and, go on and win world Olympic titles.
You had a match against him in the finals of the 2013 NCAA championships that got a lot of buzz. People still talk about it. Take us through your recollections of that match and why it might have been considered controversial.
Yeah, I know a lot of people bring it up and talk about the controversy. I don't like to talk about it too much. It happened. It is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. But I know before the match, I was talking to my brothers, and I just told them, I got nothing to lose. I wrestled this guy numerous times. I went into overtime with him at the Big Ten tournament, and I just told him I'm going to go out there and I'm going to wrestle as hard as I can, do whatever I can, and wrestle open. And I think, that match I wrestled a little more open than I did at Big Tens, and that's kind of why he got to me a few more times early on. But it also gave me more opportunities. Getting to that leg attack, and Logan tried rolling and locking up that cradle. That's one of those things where, man, how'd you let that go? You had a freaking cradle locked up, and you had a guy on his back, and you let it go. Could it have been 2 points? That's your fault for letting it go and not into the match. So there's multiple ways to look at that. I know that one of the most iconic pictures from there is when Haggerty's holding 2 on the mat for his 2 count and then gives nothing. But, I'm all good with it. I've been at peace with it, so there's not much there.
As far as wrestling for Iowa, you're a Hawkeye. You said that after your retirement here at the World Team Trials. 5 years at the University of Iowa as a college athlete. What's that culture like? What's it like to be a Hawkeye?
Man, that's a tough one. I guess, the culture being a Hawkeye is it's a close-knit community that a lot of people have respect for, but they might not like. And, going into being a Hawkeye, you understand that, and that's why you do go there in the first place is you want to be that freaking team that's always winning, putting guys on the podium, putting guys in the national finals, winning national titles, and that everyone's gunning for. And you might not have a lot of fans outside of your community, but the Hawkeye faithful is big. The state of Iowa loves Iowa wrestling, but some of the people on the outside, not so much. So that going into it.
Did you ever take it to Doug Schwab and get the best of him and make him submit?
No, I did not. So me and Schwab wrestled one time, and that was the time that I got hurt. First day of practice, I messed up my knee, and I was out for like 4 or 5 months. And then after that year is when he took the job at UNI.
Do you remember the first time you met Dan Dennis?
Me and Dennis, we grew up together, so that one's an easy one. I think a lot of people forget that Dan Dennis was an Illinois guy. He grew up in Fox Lake, which is where I grew up from second grade all the way to high school. Him and my brother were in the state bracket a couple times together. We trained up at Fox Lake High School a few times, so I've known Dan for a long time. And
then after graduation, you went right into international wrestling, and admittedly, I just didn't think you were going to do much, and you surprised me certainly when you made the world team in 2014. How did you make the transition so quickly and so effectively?
It was easy for me. A lot of people forgot, I guess, that I was very skilled in freestyle, that my style transitioned well. I always look back and I wish we had the cadet world teams and stuff when I was going through. I won 3 FILA cadets. I won the junior trials. That's where I beat Logan twice. So I had a lot of success in freestyle growing up. I didn't do it. I didn't do it through college at all, and I think that's where people kind of were a little confused that I was able to make that transition so quick.
You weren't even going to wrestle that year, right? And Megan talked you into it? Is that how it happened?
I was done. I was not wrestling that year. I was going to take the year off. You know, we planned our wedding. We planned a lot of stuff. And then I was watching, I want to say the U.S. Open. And I didn't think I could make the weight was the biggest issue. I didn't make the weight all through college. And then I saw Graf made the weight at the U.S. Open. We started having second thoughts. Maybe I can do it. You know, if he did it, I could probably make the weight. So right from there, we talked about it a few times. She said, you might as well try it, you know. At least you could say you tried then. I went in and talked to Terry. Terry was all pumped up. He said, that's the weight I wrestle. That's perfect for you. I was at that weight. You can make that weight. And then I was like, all right, we're doing this. And we had to change a lot of the plans that we had for the summer. You know, I missed our wedding shower because it was the same day as the World Team Trials. So Megan actually wasn't even there. We had to, you know, our honeymoon and the wedding, I had to miss some of the World Team training camps, things like that for that stuff. So, you know, it was a fun experience that first year.
And then you make the team in 2015. Although it didn't end how you wanted, you still wrestle in Las Vegas, still wrestle on the home soil. That has to be a unique experience. Not many people get to experience that. What was that like?
That was really cool. And, you know, like you said, didn't end like I wanted it to. I actually had put myself in position to do some great things in that tournament. You know, I made a silly mistake in the match against Iran. I'm on the shot clock. I'm in great position to let the shot clock run out, win the match. I'd go for something stupid. And, you know, basically gave that match away. And that was against a guy who was in the World Finals that year. So I had some opportunities there, and, you know, I kind of let that one slip away. But it was really cool, you know, not having to travel very far, wrestling on your home soil, your fans, your family, a lot of friends could be there. Not a lot of opportunities a lot of people get.
And then as we relate it to the book, there's just detail upon detail about the 2016 Olympic trials, which, of course, everyone still talks about to this day between you and Dan Dennis. Seemed like there's a lot of build up to that. You guys had text messages in that book, just a lot of detail going into that. Do you remember going back the first time that you felt like something wasn't going the way you wanted it to?
Man, I knew that from day one when the 2016, you know, kind of campaign started. So after the 15 World Championships, I knew the situation was about to present itself because Dennis was staying around. St. John had left that year. And I guess that's kind of when it started to get a little uncomfortable. And that's kind of where things started to build.
And then did it inhibit your training environment? Do you feel like you weren't the person you could be?
It's hard to say. You never know. I think one of the things I was always told was eliminate as many distractions as possible, you know, to give yourself the best training or training opportunity. And I felt like the biggest distraction was right in front of me. So you could say yes, you could say no. You know, it's really how you looked at it.
But then you just said with Dan Dennis that, hey, you knew him for a long time. That had to be a unique situation, regardless of circumstance, that you're going against a guy that you've known pretty much your whole life.
It was really unique because it wasn't just a guy I knew my whole life. It was a guy who was my mentor. It was a guy I looked up to. I had a lot of respect for, and it was going to be hard to compete against. Just from those two facts, you know, he helped mold me and helped shape me to the competitor I was, and he taught me a lot of things that I knew. And I had a lot of respect for him, and, you know, like I said, he was my mentor. And it was hard to compete against someone like that.
And then, of course, you just had an honest interview after the 2016 Olympic trials. When you look back at it, do you feel like that was how it should have been handled?
Probably not. You know, we got some guys that maybe in the future might be in these situations, and, you know, you start to see it a lot more now. Ohio State had the situation last year, I think it was, with Logan and McKenna. Nebraska might have it next year with James Green and Burrows. I think the biggest thing is open communication from the beginning. Everyone knows the standard and who's doing what and what's doing what. And Ohio State did a really good job with it, with allowing these guys to bring in their own coaches for those couple of weeks leading up to the stuff, and not really, kind of staying out of it and letting these guys prepare and get ready.
Tony, is there anything you wish you would have done differently, looking back on it now?
I wanted to go and train with Izzy for a few weeks beforehand. I think it was from the NCAA championships on. And I told Terry I was doing that, and it kind of got shot down right away. He did let me go for a couple of days, but not as long as I wanted to. Maybe that might be one is, when I knew I wanted to go do something, just kind of go with it and do it and, put myself in a comfortable situation.
Throughout the course of this interview, it's just apparent that you really love Iowa wrestling, that you're a Hawkeye, that you're glad you made that choice. But it seemed like from 2016 until maybe a little bit before the U.S. Open that there might have been a little chip on your shoulder against the University of Iowa wrestling a Hawkeye. How real was that? How much did it feed into wrestling a Hawkeye, especially like an AWL event? How much did that factor into your competition?
I mean, if anything, I'm always going to bleed black and gold. I'm always going to, love the Hawkeyes, and that's my school. That's my team. That was my family. I think it hindered me in the fact that it got there were a lot of emotions at first when I would wrestle those guys. Just from everything, coaches, athletes, done a lot together. I wanted to prove something to them. And I think, right before the World Team Trials, I did some things that I needed to do to fully let those emotions go when I competed, and, it helped a lot. I was able to wrestle a lot better against Clark. I was able to, just go in there and compete and not worry about the other stuff. You
said you did some stuff prior to the World Team Trials. Can you share that a little bit? Yeah. What freed you up?
I could share a little bit about it and not too much, but me and Tom had a conversation at the Open, and I think, that was a conversation I needed to have to really kind of have closure and end all that stuff. Not going to go much into details of what was said, but that's kind of where that was at.
But just even publicly, just hearing Tom throughout the years since the Olympic trials, he always spoke very highly of you, very favorably. I have to assume that at this point that you guys are in good terms and that you guys appreciate each other.
Yeah, I think we appreciate each other. I think we're, I guess you could say good terms. I think we're on terms of moving forward and, mending the relationship, or not the relationship, but maybe some of the scars or the wounds that were there, and kind of everyone going forward together.
As far as retirement, you put your shoes on the mat at the World Team Trials in North Carolina. Interesting that it was at NC State, just a few miles from where you are now in Chapel Hill. How much did you think about that going into the World Team Trials, that this is going to be my last year competing?
I knew that this was going to be it. Your body can only go for so long. Your mind can only, not be as strong, but it gets tired after a while. When you're in every day preparing for battle, practices, matches, competition, I did this for 25 years, and 15 of those years are probably pretty competitive. And I knew we were getting to a point, there's been some talk between me, family, people close to me, if, I was even going to do this year. But I felt that it was right to go out on my terms and, give it one last go. And then if I won, I won. If I didn't, that was it. There was talk between me and my wife of doing that another time. That I thought would have been pretty cool, and it would have been cool if we could have did it there, but it just kind of didn't work out.
What's the biggest challenge when you're balancing your role as an assistant coach with your role as a competitor?
Just time management. If you can manage your time right, if you know when to really take care of yourself, take care of the guys, and it's pretty easy. I think some people, kind of get confused in that part, and they try and do it all together, and it doesn't work out very well. You gotta have time that's fully focused on the guys, and you gotta have time that's fully focused on you.
You're one of the guys who has kind of changed the games in terms of marketing himself, promoting himself. What went into that? What kind of things who did you study? What kind of things did you want to do to brand yourself like that? Because I think you've probably given yourself opportunities that you wouldn't have if you hadn't put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think you look at some of the top athletes around the world and you see what they're doing, but also you need to look at some of the top influencers in the world and what they're doing. At one point I sat down and I read, I think it was an article on maybe Kim Kardashian or one of them, about how they use their social media platforms and how they, Twitter and Instagram aren't always the same things posted. They're separate things, or there might be one on one that you wouldn't see on the other, so people have to follow you on all of them. And it's not always the same followers. You got a broad band of followers, and they got to go to both to get different things. So you use the resources of the people that are very successful at it, and then you kind of spin it to what works best for you and what works best for your crowd.
What made this important for you? Why is this something you wanted to pursue?
Because I think I started to see that there were opportunities in the sport of wrestling to make money on that end. And if you didn't have a brand or you didn't have a following, it's going to be hard to pursue those. I think my class, with me, Taylor, Dake, Oliver, we were probably the innovators for the guys coming through, and really kind of opened up the landscape of what type of money is there and opportunities.
Coleman Scott, he's the guy right now at North Carolina. He brought you into the North Carolina staff, had you on the RTC there. What makes him so effective as a coach?
Not that he's laid back, but that he's pretty open. The communication channels are open. He's very understanding. He gives you a little bit more freedom, I would guess, and it allows, I have freedom to do things with the program or with guys, that I wouldn't say other staffs wouldn't allow, but you might not be allowed to do some places. If I'm making a decision or making a call and that's the decision I make, he 100% supports it because he thinks it's the best for the program and the best, for that guy. And like I said, he's with you 100% of the time.
And then Kenny Monday, he has a lot of history, man. He was as good as you get. What's it like being around someone that has achieved at such a high level?
It's good. He's got a lot of stories back in the day of, some of the biggest tournaments in the world that he's won. And then, just what the things he had to do to be successful and overcome, some of the toughest competitors in the world. He's beat some of the best guys and some of the biggest names. So he's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of history that, you can take a lot of things from.
I know that you had mentioned health is a big part of why you decided to retire this year, but just hypothetically, I know that next year is the Olympic year and probably getting down to 57 kilos is out of the picture, but what would be wrong with saying, if you were healthy, I'm just going all in with the non-Olympic weight class and I'm just going to try to make that non-Olympic world championship team at 61 kilos?
I don't think I'm content. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. So I really haven't thought about that route or even, thought it might be a possibility. Like I said, if I was 100% healthy and I could train the way I wanted to, maybe. But, my body's beat up, been through a lot. My neck hurts, my back hurts, my knees hurt. I'm hurting in places you didn't think you could. And it'd be tough.
What do you enjoy now about turning the page to coaching, being a coach full time? What do you enjoy about coaching?
I love coaching, and the biggest thing I probably like about it is taking a guy who you see a lot of potential but might not believe in himself, and you get him to believe, and you get him to believe in your process and your system. And then when you start seeing the success and he starts achieving these goals, the excitement, the joy, the memories that you create with them are amazing.
I hear you say that. The first guy I'm thinking of is Troy Heilman.
Troy Heilman is a big one. And Troy Heilman is a guy who probably helped me more than I helped him. There were times with Troy where, I really had to sit down. And when I mean sit down, walk away real quick and give myself 5 minutes to think about how the heck am I going to get this guy pick himself back up, believe in what I'm telling him, and stick with this process, because he's down and out. He's about ready to freaking tell me to screw off and quit this sport. So I had to learn some things pretty fast with Troy. And, we worked well together. Troy's awesome. I love him. If I ever had a program one day somewhere, I would take him with me because he's a workhorse. And he's going to listen to you. He's going to buy in your system. He's going to believe in what you do. And he's not going to ask questions. He's just going to do it. Another guy that didn't have the success at the end that Troy might have had was Corey Daniel. Seeing some of the improvements he made this year, and some of the transitions in his lifestyle and in his training was awesome. And I wish, he could have ended his career, a way like Troy did. He didn't, but he's setting himself up for some success in the future with some of the decisions he made going forward with just, his life and how he goes about things. And he's got some opportunities now.
Just a couple minutes ago, you were talking about how beat up you are. Are you still going to be able to get on the mat and scrap with, you got a whole fleet of young guys, little guys that are talented.
We got a young fleet of really good little guys. And am I going to get on the mat with them all the time? I'll get on when I need to, when, they might need a beating or some knowledge. But I think we got a really good group of young guys that are going to be able to push each other, where we're kind of just going to be able to sit back and do some more coaching instead of actually having to get on the mat and show them how to do it. And that's exciting when your program gets to that point. Like you said, we got a lot of good young guys. O'Connor should be, preseason number one. Should be competing for a national title next year. We got a couple guys coming off red shirt like Joey Melendez, Zach Sherman, who are going to do some damage and really help make our lineup solid. And Jamie Hernandez, who everyone saw, I think he turned some heads up in Raleigh, beating NCAA All-Americans. And then another guy at around that same weight is Gabe Tagg, who's coming in. There's a lot of exciting things going on with the program.
You've been down there 3 years, Tony. In the 3 years you've been there, how have you seen the wrestling culture in the state of North Carolina change?
It's changed tremendously. You got teams like us, NC State, you got Colette down at Campbell, who are giving these kids, these high school kids, someone to look up to and someone to believe in and like, see that guy? I'm going to be like him one day. I want to wrestle at the University of North Carolina. I want to wrestle, at Campbell. And these kids are starting to put more effort in, maybe to their wrestling and their training, a more emphasis on wrestling, going out to these big events. And I think you're going to start seeing, a transition of some of the recruiting hotbeds. You already see it now with the state of Georgia. For a while, you would have never said Georgia was a wrestling state. I mean, you better start looking down there because they got some tough kids.
Hey, going back to your pre-college days, you mentioned Israel Martinez, a huge influence on you. What were the greatest takeaways you had from your time with him?
Oh, man, he just taught me how to be confident and, how to work hard and how to be disciplined. Some of the biggest things, you got to be disciplined in your life and in your habits and, being on time and just some of the little things. And then just hard work. He put me through some of the hardest work or workouts that I've ever had in my career, and it just made me tough, and it made me be able to push through anything. And then when I started having success with it, it really made you believe in what he was doing, and you didn't question anything.
Tony, you mentioned Ashton Kutcher earlier, and we like to play games on this show. And I'm going to just make up a game on the fly, and it's a game called How Would You Punk? I'm going to give you a couple names of people, and I want to see how you would punk these people. We got to just start with Tom and Terry Brands. How would you punk Tom and Terry Brands?
Oh, man. Tom and Terry. Can I do them separate, or they got to be
do it
together?
separate if you feel like that's needed. Absolutely.
Terry, I would switch out his, I would switch out his Chevy, I think it is, that he has, that he always drives around, and just wreck it really bad. He would probably lose his mind. He loves that truck.
Oh, man. Okay. I like it. How about Tom? You got something for him?
Tom. What can he do to Tom? Tom's a little different.
And it seems like he might be savvy enough to maybe know something's coming, too.
He is. Terry you could probably get. Tom, I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah. How do you think, while you're thinking, how do you think Tom would take it if you got him? Do you think he'd be okay with it and think it's funny, or do you think there'd be some...
Oh, I think he'd be okay with it, but I think Terry would want to kill you.
Okay, we'll circle back to Tom. You can just kind of keep that in your subconscious. Right. How about Gable? What would you do to Gable?
Gable? I'd make it look like his sauna started on fire.
There you go. There you go. That's good.
Or you just gotta take Adam off the wall in the wrestling room.
Yeah. Now, just from knowing Dan, I think he would be pretty easy to punk.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, if he walked in and I took Adam off the wall in the wrestling room and took down the punching bag, he would. I don't know what he would do.
Yeah, he'd probably lose his mind. These are good, boy. You're coming up with some good ones here. How about?
I know what you could do with Tom.
Okay, go for it.
You just switch out the Dan Gable statue and put Tom up there. Tom hates, that type of recognition stuff. I know when that book came out about him and his brother, he was a little skeptical about it at first.
Oh, you talking about the one his mom wrote?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the big old Tom Brand statue out front. I think you're right. I think that would, these are good. These are really good.
You would not like that.
Okay. That's really good. I 3 for 3 here. You got 5 out of 5 stars. How about Dan Dennis? You got something up your sleeve for him?
Tell him that he owns a house, maybe? I don't think anyone would believe that.
So go buy him a house?
Or put him in some clothes like he had to wear for the Olympic Games there, where he's in those like white pants and a blazer.
Oh, the polo clothes?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I bet he threw that stuff away already.
Probably. I mean,
if you took all his rock climbing equipment and hid that somewhere, that would not be good.
Okay. Coleman Scott, you got something up your sleeve for him?
Coleman would probably be one of the easiest to get. Man. Whew. Coleman would probably be easy to get, but I don't know what I'd get him with right now. Coleman likes a lot of different things. I'd have to think about that one.
Okay. How about like family members? Let's go with maybe your brother and then your wife, and then we'll end it with those two.
Oh, you can never get my brother Frank.
You couldn't get Frank?
I couldn't get Frank.
Okay.
I could try, but that'd be hard. He's seen a lot of different things in his life.
Okay.
So,
how about your wife?
Probably not a good idea, but tell her one of the kids went missing.
Man. Yeah, that's pulling it out, man.
Joke about, but that would freak her out.
Yeah. What if you? I mean, that one's extreme. But what if you said, you know what, I'm gonna come back for the Olympic trials, and I'm gonna
She
bump
would like
up.
that. She'd be okay with that.
She'd be okay.
She would be okay with that.
What if you said, I'm coming back, but I'm going to 74 kilos to try to beat Burroughs?
She would probably just laugh.
So that wouldn't be a good punk. That would be a good punk. Well, you had some good ones there, and you've had a career that we've enjoyed. Thanks for being candid, and you have always been a fan favorite. Even if the fans didn't like you, you're a fan favorite because you gave someone something to talk about. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks, Tony. It's Tony Ramos, and we had a chance to talk to him about his career. You followed him. You covered him way more than I did, Andy, but it seems like that's exactly who Tony Ramos is, a guy that'll give you a lot of good info.
Yeah, one of the best. Says what's on his mind, and I said last week, credibility because he wins, and he's honest. He thinks outside the box. Colorful. Just what more do you want?
You going to miss watching him compete?
Yeah. I'm going to miss interviewing him as a competitor, too, and a lot of good Tony Ramos memories covering him the past, 10 years since he committed. So
when did he first come on your radar? You have a moment?
Yeah, followed him a little bit before he committed, before I heard that he had made his decision. I remember it was the fall of his, senior year in high school when I found out. I think it was the fall of his senior year of high school when I found out he committed to Iowa, and just remember that first interview. Some of the stuff he said then, I'm like, wow, this guy's going to be fun to cover. Yeah, it's just a delight to cover him. He would always talk, win or lose. And he would always tell you what's on his mind, and appreciated that. Always appreciate the guys. Anybody can stand up there and talk when things are going their way, when they're winning titles and getting their hand raised all the time. But, when the guys show up just as much after tough losses, you appreciate it even more.
You brought up something that was interesting to me, and that was the social media part of the sport, which there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of that. And the people that come to mind to me are Helen Maroulis, Adeline Gray, David Taylor, Kyle Dake, Jordan Burroughs, just to name a few. But I had never really seen Tony Ramos in that light until you brought up that question and brought that to light. Would you say he was one of the first that really took advantage of social media and made that a platform to just become elevated in his profile? Yeah,
I think the people you just named were on the cutting edge of it. Burroughs, I think, was brilliant with his Twitter handle. I think that captured a lot of attention from the beginning. And then when you go out and actually back it up by winning a bunch of golds, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
And but Tony, I think he did a tremendous job of marketing himself and finding ways to generate more income. I think that for the longest time we're in this era where if you weren't an assistant coach, it was hard to get by if you're competing to win world and Olympic titles. And we've seen guys that have the Home Depot used to, and maybe they still do, I don't know, had the Olympic program where you go in and work 20 hours and you get 40 hours worth of pay.
Yeah.
But I've talked to Mark Ironside about it when he was competing. I think he was going into like a UPS or a FedEx warehouse and unloading boxes from like midnight until 8 a.m. and then going into the practice room. And, we just didn't have the opportunities then for post-grads that there are now. And it's great to see that there's an influx of money into the sport, and also that athletes have gone out and found ways to make themselves marketable to companies that are outside the scope of, we're not just talking about wrestling shoes and wrestling apparel companies that they're marketing themselves to, but tool companies and chainsaw companies and all sorts of other things that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you think of wrestling.
And that was an era when you say that. I smile because Tolly Thompson did that. He was with the Home Depot program. And one of the funniest stories to me was when Tolly made the world team, I think in 05 or 06, wherever it was, when it was in Ames, Iowa. Tolly, before he was about to step foot on the mat, was taking a call from a tenant because he had properties. And he said, hey, I got to hang up. I got to go wrestle here in a little bit. So you think about that in context.
Fix your water heater later.
I'll get that later. It just, every time I think of that story, I just smile and laugh. Melvin Douglas mixed cement, and I think it was in Tempe, Arizona. He was part of that program, and there were a lot of people that were part of that. But when you think about it, how do you subsidize your lifestyle and still train? And I remember that, and it might not have been during the time, but I know Mark Ironside delivered pop for Pepsi at one point, was a Pepsi truck driver for them. And you kind of think that, hey, these guys are high-level athletes, which they are, but how do you make an income to support you and your family? And I think we're seeing some more cutting-edge ways, and I just appreciated getting that context about Tony Ramos being able to do that through social media.
Remember when Lincoln McElravy got Gateway Computers on board?
I do.
That was kind of rare. That was really rare for a company like that. But I think South Dakota company, South Dakota born athlete, born and raised, and that was maybe the connection there. Yeah,
and they had posters with him standing on the Gateway box.
That was so foreign to wrestling at that point.
And I think just the career of Lincoln McElravy was a little cutting edge too, winning as a true freshman, redshirting in 96 to take that Olympic year. He was doing some things that not a lot of people had done up to that point that are pretty much now the standard, with guys doing well as true freshmen. The Olympic redshirt is not a big deal anymore. A lot of guys doing that. So had a guy that is a pioneer there with the Hawkeye Wrestling program. A lot of fun to talk to Tony. I remember you telling me always that he was a guy that would give you a lot, and I think this interview certainly was a reflection of that. So glad we got a chance to really give him the credit he deserves on a really good career.
Yeah, and I was interested to hear he was on academic probation his first year at Iowa, much like myself.
Were you at 165?
I was probably in that range, maybe a little bit higher. I know I was sub 2.
Okay.
I know my academic advisor when I got there told me your 3 priorities in this order are working for the school newspaper, the Daily Iowan, doing as much. If you're serious about this, go and do as much as you possibly can with the Daily Iowan. And I took that to heart. So I was skipping class on Tuesdays to go to Hayden Fry press conferences, and 2 of my most important classes, and really not performing well in those. But he said, do well at the Daily Iowan, number 1, go out and have a good time because you can't go back and do college all over again. And number 3, do enough to stay in school. He goes, because I can promise you, if you're serious about this, nobody's ever going to ask you for a transcript. And thank goodness they haven't.
Were you under a 2.5 by the time you were graduated?
Under a 2.5?
Yeah. Do you remember your final GPA?
I think it was like 2.32.
2.32. So there's a lesson here. You can be the greatest.
So I wasn't close enough to that 2-point threshold to just do the bare minimum like he was suggesting.
You could be the greatest wrestling journalist ever and have a 2.3. That's the lesson out of this. But it's important because think about it. You got the work experience. I don't know if I'd advocate it completely.
I think I could have taken 1 college course and worked at the Daily Iowan, and
you'd be fine.
Be absolutely as well off. So
a new trail that Andy Hamilton blazed as well. We had a lot of fun with Tony Ramos.
I'm not endorsing that, by the way. I'm not endorsing that.
And we don't take it that way.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Do well in school, kids.
Do well in school. It's been fun to talk to Tony Ramos. As always, for Andy Hamilton, I am Kyle Klingman. You have been listening to On the Mat.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.